So, welcome to Replenish, hope that sustains in the midst of adversity. This is a safe place where I invite special guests to share encouragement and insight to replenish us in the journey of raising kids from hard places. So, whether you're an adoptive, foster, or safe family, this conversation is for you. And before I introduce to you our guests, I just want to remind you that the chat room is open. So, feel free to talk amongst your answer each other's questions. This conversation is just as much for you guys and about you guys as it is Daren and I who will be talking, but feel free to help out. We're all in there. Today I've invited Daren for a conversation about men can nurture too. So hi Daren, and before we get started, let me just tell everybody why you're so amazing. So Daren has his master's degree in social work. He has had a variety of positions over the past 12 years serving kids from hard places within residential and the foster care settings. Currently, he is a training specialist with the Karen Purvis Institute for Child Development at the Texas Christian University. His main focus is instructing professionals who work with children who have experienced relational trauma through trust-based relational intervention, TBRI as we call it for short. He joined the Institute in 2014, and he's been an integral part of teaching and sharing TBRI across the U.S. and throughout the world. So hi, Daren. Welcome to Replenish.
Hello. How y'all doing?
Good. So I just always start everybody out with the same question. Just helps us get to know you and kind of see where you've come from. So what started you on this journey into the world of kids from hard places?
Oh man, that's a big question in a short amount of time, but I'll give a brief. First, I always like to talk about, especially after hearing the bio, I always believe in staying connected to the root, which for me is, I'm from a small town in Arkansas. It's a big city of 10,000 people. I know that's a bit different for, folks in California, if you will, but what's significant about that as it connects to my journey and how I got started is, being raised up by my grandmother in Arkansas. I remember going off to college and I just went to college to buy some time because I didn't know what to do with my life. So as I was sitting down with my advisor asked me, she said, "What do you want to major in?" And my answer was, "I don't know. I'm just here trying to buy some time." And I told her, I said, "I want to do what my grandmother does and has always done for me and people in the community." And she said, "What's that?" So I talked about my grandmother, and how she brought people in her home and really just cared and took care of folks, all the time. And she gave me two choices. She said, "That sounds like social work or sociology." And I said, "I choose social work," because that sounds, she described what each one of those were, because I never heard of social work or a social worker. So anyway, fast forward, as I began to get into coursework and work, in the field at various environments, specifically working with kiddos, that I would say, people responded to differently and looked at differently because of the way that they were, acting or displaying behavior. And for me, most folks would go the other way and I would go towards the kids. And it just felt like a natural fit or connection, if you will. And I've always been drawn to, the kids who may not be the popular ones, the majority. And that's pretty much where it started until I, was led over the years to the Institute.
Nice, wonderful. I just love hearing that you were just drawn to kids, and kids from hard places. It's before you even knew what that meant or where you would be going, that was already your heart and your personality.
Yeah. And just to add on, what was interesting, is that most people, you know, in at either at organizations or in the community or in a classroom would be baffled by some of the kids and their behavior in history. And I used to always say, like, what's wrong with y'all? Like, this is normal, isn't it? Like, what's wrong with this kid? I don't see it the same way y'all see it, you know. So that was just it's just been like that from day one. You know, I don't see myself any different. You know, when I think about the kids we serve and in the journey.
So tell us a little bit before we get into nurture and why it's so important, and talk a little bit about how that fits in with the TBRI intervention. So we're talking about kids from hard places, and what we're really talking about is kids who have experienced deep relational trauma. And you were sharing a little bit about they have, you know, a little bit different kind of behaviors. So just to kind of set a brief paradigm for what we're talking about, foundation, can you just share with us a little bit about how early childhood relational trauma affects our children and what that ends up looking like as they grow?
Right, definitely. So, you know, we I'd say in the based on our kids' histories, you know, and we know, I don't have to, I'm sure everybody on the line is familiar with the history of our kids, but what has taken place through this relational trauma is that based on their history, they either missed out on connection and nurture, or they never received it at all. Therefore, they, based on those experiences of exposure of relational trauma, they, over time, their bodies and their brains and their biology, their belief system developed in a way that is, for lack of better terms, not the traditional behaviors that our eyes and that we're used to. So in a nutshell, we know that the history of our kids, you know, impacts the brain, the body, the biology, the belief system, and ultimately the behavior. And it's the behavior that for years, until we begin to understand about relational trauma, that we focused on. How do I stop this behavior? But now that we know the why that's driving this behavior, we now know it's not bad child, it's not difficult child, it's a child who's, we use the term a lot, a survivor. This kid is a survivor based on the history and the trauma that they've been exposed to. So that paradigm shift, or that mental model that we always encourage people to think about in the day-to-day, is when we see those behaviors of a child, even though they might not be, you know, that appetizing to us, we have to ask ourselves, is this a willful child, a bad child? Or is this what I like to keep in my mind always, you know, whether it's a 3-year-old or a 23-year-old, you know, based on the history, I always ask myself and say, is this baby simply trying to survive? They're not trying to push my buttons or rub me the wrong way, or poke the bear, as we call it. They're surviving based on the way that their brain and body and biology was trained up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, to all of us on this call, it totally makes sense. You know, I had a guest on a couple weeks ago, and they were sharing that our children, it's like they have an unseen disability, and the symptom is behaviors. And so, yeah, we got to treat that unseen disability like you're talking about, the root of it.
Right.
And when we treat that root, the symptoms disappear or diminish.
Right.
Are manageable, or
Right.
all of the above.
Right.
Depending on our starting place.
Yeah. And actually, you know, it's interesting when you say they, you know, the behaviors disappear, diminish. You know, this is my own belief, and just based on my experience, you know, of years specifically working in residential settings, you know, with kiddos. we came to an understanding that the more we understood the kids' history and that this was survival behavior, it wasn't necessarily, yes, the behaviors changed or they diminished, but I think the overall is that we as the adults begin to see our kids differently. Therefore, we respond and act differently. And when we do that, you know, that feedback process is if we act a certain way and respond a certain way, then our kids begin to follow because we are the models of that, you know, that missing piece of relationship, as I mentioned earlier, and that cycle that they either missed out or was disrupted along the way.
Yeah, I love that. I call it, like, in my own mind, and I don't think I made this up. I got it somewhere because I don't really have a lot of original thoughts. Is I just get them from everywhere and put them together. Is compassionate parenting. You know, it's just a different way of parenting. So TBRI has been a life source for us. It's been, now it's you know, like a verb.
Right,
We
right,
TBRI each other, you know, and that is, it's just a lifestyle. It's not even, I know it stands for trust-based relational intervention, but it's not really even an intervention or a clinical checklist of things we have to do. It's what we live and breathe and just part of who we are now.
yeah.
And so explain to people a little bit. I'm sure a lot of people on the call are familiar with what TBRI is, but just to segue into how nurture fits into that, can you just share with us, what is trust-based relational intervention? What's TBRI all about? And what's it have to do with parenting?
Right. So as you mentioned, you know, we too see TBRI as a way of life, a way of being, and it's, you know, like I say it at my house all the time. It's just, you know, it brought a lot to our household, and really me as an individual, you know, now saved a lot. It saved Daren, you know, and just the trajectory I was on based on my history. Now that I have a different understanding, so TBRI has 3 sets of principles: empowering, connecting, and correcting. So, you know, as I mentioned earlier, when we talk about trauma impacts the brain, the body, the biology, the belief system, and ultimately the behavior, we must have an intervention, and through TBRI, it's all about meeting the needs of the whole child, right? So, and if you think about development, you know, if we have a 2-month-old baby, you know, we meet those needs of connecting all day, every day. Baby cries, we come in connecting. And within connecting principles, we have the engagement strategies, and we have what we call mindfulness strategies. So it's all about, you know, thinking about mindfulness, I need to be aware of myself and what I bring to the table or their interaction with the child. I need to be mindful and be thinking about the history of the child, and be with and present, as well as how do I interact with my child, you know, regarding the way I engage. So if you think about holding that baby, that infant, you know, we adore, you know, that baby's preciousness with our eyes and eye contact and voice tone and touch, all of those things that we were designed to do. We've put it within the connecting principles, so that it could be framed and utilized, not with just the 2-month-old, but the 17-year-old. And we also, within empowering principles, if you think about, you know, meeting the needs of the whole child, it's all about supporting the body and the brain through food, physical activity, things of that nature, sensory, supporting the sensory needs and such. And then ultimately with TBRI, we've been really intentional about connection being the core of everything that we do. And when we connect and we have a foundation of empowering, supporting the body and the brain, we ultimately can change behavior through the correcting principles, or shape behavior, for another term. And within that, you know, we talk about both proactive strategies and responsive strategies. So with proactive, you know, we don't want to wait until the wheels fall off. We want to be what I call getting our playbook together and practicing our plays, if you will. I always use sports analogies. Practice our plays before, you know, we get to game time. So that's why proactive teaching is important, so that we know, you know, when the lights turn on, if you will, in this game time, we know exactly how to respond and interact. Both the adults and the kids know what to expect out of us. So one of the things you said earlier, and Karen, Dr. Purvis used to say this all the time, is that, you know, TBRI is it basically comes down to putting this framework and these strategies and principles in place, and there's nothing, you know, I would say over the top special about it. Karen would say it's just what your grandma, the good stuff your grandma used to do with you. And that was, you know, a real good selling point for me, because when I was exposed to TBRI, I'm like, you're right, these are the same things that my grandma would do to me, and we've put it in a nice framework, if you will, and have, you know, evidence to support why those things are important.
It's always the grandmas, right? Grandmas are the best, man. It's like they're wise enough by that time, and they're far enough away from the actual hands-on parenting that they just got that grandma love.
Right. Definitely.
I love that. So, and another thing, like I write down things. So if you see me looking down, that's what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
I love to take notes because I learned just as much from this conversation as everybody else. Okay, this is kind of a total guy thing where you said, you know, you practice your plays for game time. Like I don't remember you. I'm sure you've said that before, but I like that. That's such a sports guy kind of thing. So let's kind of talk. Let's go ahead and talk about nurture. You know, when it comes to guys. First of all, tell us what is nurture, and how's it fit in with TBRI, and why is it important for our kiddos who have experienced early childhood trauma?
Right. So nurture is I mean, it's essential, you know. I think it's like oxygen. I mean, you really can't go without it, you know. And so as we think about TBRI, one of the reasons is the core, is because if you really step back and look at the big picture of everything, just kind of take a step back. If through relationship, you know, that's the only way our kids feel safe, or we just decrease the stress that we talk about, you know, that's been developed in our kids' system based on their history. So through relationship and interaction, that's the only way they feel safe. And once they feel safe, you know, through relationship, it's the only way that they begin to trust. And what we now know, if they don't feel safe and they don't trust through that relationship, that's the only way to connection. And if we don't have that foundation of connection, then we never get to a place of shaping, you know, any type of behavior, if you will, with our kids. And ultimately, you know, when we think about attachment and just relationships, it comes back down to, in my day-to-day life, you know, each and every day, how do I, and this goes for, you know, youngsters, babies, you know, adults, whoever, you know, living and breathing, how do I give care? How do I receive care? Be autonomous in relationships and negotiate my needs. And those, we know those are the four essential ingredients to relationships, success in relationships. So nurture is it's a must.
I love that. That's the four things that we talk about. We were just talking about this last week with nurture groups.
Mm-hmm,
Those are
definitely.
the four things that you know, are the key to that, which is something that is coming down coming down for everybody. We're going to be having virtual nurture groups for our kiddos and our families. So tell me, in what ways has nurture, you talked earlier about TBRI when you first were explaining it, how it helped you, it saved you. So tell me about that. I know for me, it's been a journey raising a kid with trauma and me having to go back and look at my own trauma experiences. And I really had to work hard on my own stuff because my kids' triggers triggered me. Right. And so when we talk about nurture, I think that this comes into play. And how did that work out for you? And what's your journey been with nurture and being able to come to this place where you're able to do that and not get triggered by your kids' behaviors? Right. Obviously, we know we're not perfect and we do get triggered at times, but there is a journey that we can get to where we don't have to be triggered.
Right. Yeah, we definitely all are, human and get triggered. It's in us. Just to speak a little bit about the journey, for me, I could, it's pretty clear of those pivotal moments, I would say. So I had my life and, college, and then I get out into the world as an adult. And I mentioned earlier, my area of passion was, serving kids in residential facilities. And, entering into early on, before I was exposed to TBRI, my approach was really punitive, bring down the hammer, pull off the it was really just physical. It was really, in the place as a male, my mind frame was the way that I fix this, because we like to fix stuff. The way I fix this is to exert my physical power and authority, over these kids, which resulted in, fear-based, interactions with the kids and threats and so forth and so forth. And which resulted in no change in the kids. And it resulted in, the change that was happening was in me, because I was more stressed every day. I was running out of ammunition, if you will, on what to say, what to do. Began to feel as somebody who thought they had power, being put in a position like I've lost control. Like I have no control of this house or this situation or this kid. Right. So I remember distinctly going to a training, and I say this all the time when I'm out and I speak to folks, because I think it's important and it's key. And I get chills even thinking about it right now. One of my coworkers asked me to go to a training with her, and I literally rolled my eyes and I said, I don't want to go to another training. And I said, but I'll go, because I want to get me about a 6 or 8 hour break, because I know I won't be in here with all these kids and I just want to get out of here, right? And at this time, I didn't know who Karen was, Dr. Purvis. And I remember walking in, and it was this little bitty chapel I was in, small group of people. And we're listening to Karen, and I'm listening to this lady speak. And one thing she said that's always stuck with me is that, she said, the kids bled before they came to us. They must not bleed on our watch. Mm-hmm. And it really hit me like a stack of bricks, So then I started to kind of get inside my head, and I was thinking all types of things. And I said, some of the realizations that came was here I am, these kids are coming to receive care, to a safe place, be with safe people. They've been abused, bruised, on the streets, any violation towards the kids you can think of, these babies have experienced. And the way that I'm interacting and acting on the day-to-day is not much different than where they came from, and especially if you really get down to what my response is doing to the nervous system and the stress system, right? so fast forward a bit, and not to make this long, but to get to a point, to fast forward, I started digging in and looking more and more into TBRI, and one of the things I came across was adverse childhood experiences study.
Mm.
And I don't know if people are familiar with it, but you know, couple doctors, Anna and Filetti, you know, surveyed around 16, 17,000 people, middle America, you know, folks. And one of the things that they discovered is these people took this questionnaire asking about their history, you know. So thinking about your childhood, um, you know, have you experienced things like physical abuse, sexual abuse, you know, drugs and alcohol in the home, family member incarcerated, divorce, you know, in these categories. And I remember taking the ACEs questionnaire myself one day, and then I look at it, and I'm like, wow. Out of you know, whatever the number is, 10 of these questions, you know, I have 4 more ACEs that I've checked off, but I've never ever uh, uh, um, I've never explored that part of myself, or
Right.
or my history, if that makes sense. So at that point, that was really a pivotal place for me, because I began to think about things like, wow, you know, this makes sense that I get ticked off that this, you know, 12-year-old is running off at the mouth to you know, Miss Wallace, who's you know, a female, and she's older in age, and me being raised up by my grandma, you don't do stuff like that. When I really started to dig into it, I started to think like, I'm getting upset, not because of that kid's behavior really, it's because of my own history. So then the more I start to dig into it, I start to ask myself, well, Daren, why are you getting so, you know, excuse my language, so pissed off at these kids, you know? And the reason I was getting so angry is that, you know, I go back to the ACEs question, and I'm like, um, you know, my parents were divorced, you know, and then my mom remarried. You know, I'm a product of 2 divorces in my household. You know, and I can vividly remember in the past. You know, if you ask me about a birthday as a child, I can't really give you specifics and details. But if you ask me about, you know, the second marriage, and the fighting that happened, and dishes thrown, and yelling and screaming, and me being inside the closet, and my sister's 8 years older than I, and she's in there holding me in the closet while the ruckus is going on and tears coming down my eyes. I could give you play by play, you know, what that looked like. So anyway, that was one of those pivotal moments where I had to make the decision of, if I'm gonna be in the lives of these kiddos and these babies, and I'm gonna really, you know, try to help and not hurt, I have to get to a place where I start to, you know, understand my own journey. And if I'm gonna get to a place of nurturing and connecting and helping these, you know, these babies feel, you know, feel safe, and they can trust and they connect, I have to look inward and begin to look at my own stuff, and begin to work on my own stuff. And then I'll say this last thing, and then I'll be quiet.
No, no, no. Don't be quiet. We love
one,
it.
one of the things that goes with this, that you know, Karen would say it all the time, and she would say, you know, we have no business asking our kiddos to do anything that we're not willing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't ask my you know, I can't ask my baby to act a certain way, or you need to express yourself, you need to go talk to the therapist, or you need to, you know, regulate, or, you know, whatever it is that we're telling them to do. I have no business doing that if I'm not willing to look at my own stuff, and work on myself, and regulate myself, and really keep myself in check along the way. So
I love that, Daren. I appreciate you just sharing a little bit with us about your background. And I think it's so important because this is such a difficult journey of parenting for us. And if we aren't willing to look back at our own histories and figure out what is triggering us, like I like that you shared that it was, you could see the things that were triggering you, you know, your childhood and the divorces. And we throw around divorce like it's just an event, but there's so much that goes on in the household before that point. You know, it's a crazy situation. And how those are the things that play into our current parenting. And unless we're willing to go back and really look at that stuff and find some peace and healing, then we're not going to be able to be present. We're going to be responding on the past. And that's so hard. And I just appreciate you being a male, being willing to come on and share that, because I think for women, we have, I don't know, I hope I'm not stereotyping this for anybody, but I feel like because we are tend to be more emotional and nurturing and have more words, that it's easier for us to go back and explore that. Not easier, I don't want to say that, but we're more likely to go into our past and into our history and talk to our girlfriends about it. But I think it's harder for men, maybe because they don't talk to other guys that way. But what were your steps in doing that? I like that you were sharing about that and you knew it was necessary. Did you talk to people, like, and how did you, once you looked and you found out what that was, did you have to do any healing, or like, how did you know then, how did that stop you from behaving that way in the present?
Right. Yeah. So I definitely had to get a circle of people around me that were gonna be, you know, open and honest with me and give me, you know, real time feedback. And so just I'll give an example, you know, in residential, then an example, you know, like current day at my house is you know, I just a practical. I recall, you know, 11-year-old kiddo, he would, you know, there was a time where he would just, I mean, hours of, you know, on the roof and running through the neighborhood, and we're on a foot chase and, you know, all type of stuff going on. But his last part of his, you know, I'll just call it a fit, because that's the way I looked at it at the time. The last part of his fit, he would always go inside the closet. He would curl up in the fetus position and he would just bawl, just tears coming down his eyes. And so, like, in the moment of kind of pulling back the onion of myself, you know, some of the things I noticed was and this was the what to do, you know, when you talk about the practical things to do. I had to have people around me to be honest, and I had to be honest with myself and ask myself hard questions, which was, how come you can't get down there like Sarah and pull his hair off of his face and rub the tears off his face, or go get him a cup of water, or hold him in his arms while he's sitting there, you know, crying. And so each and every day, you know, I had to, it was a constant, you know, reflection. And then I had to tell myself, well, what am I going to do tomorrow that's different, that where I can, you know, tap into that nurture bone, because I know I have it, it's there, you know, but I need to bring it out, you know. So I would, you know, I would pretty much force myself to say, I know what he's going to do tomorrow, right? Because I'm pretty sure he's going to be on the roof again. He's going to run around. We're going to be on a foot chase. But tomorrow, I might not be ready on my journey to just jump in there and put him on my lap and rock him back and forth and wipe the tears off. And I have to own that, you know. That's okay as long as I'm working at it. Mm-hmm. So I would literally just go in and say, I can take a knee beside him in the closet, and I can just sit there because my history wants to say something and fix it and stop it and exert my authority. But I can, you know, Daren, you can go sit beside that closet on one knee and just shut up and don't say a word, and just practice being with. And even that type practice, it wasn't hard because of the behavior that was being displayed. It was hard because that nurturing side of me giving care was something that is really outside of my, it's uncomfortable to me, you know what I mean? But it was
Yeah.
something I had to be intentional about and focus on. And even current day, at my house, I think a lot of people believe, Daren works at the Caring Purpose Institute at TCU, and he trains on TBRI. He must, have TBRI down and all of the nurture stuff and so many things that's going on. But today, I mean, every day I have to practice and be intentional. And my wife is the person now who calls me out on it, and I have to be okay, with that. Now, do I get kind of upset and kind of in a funk sometimes when she's like, you need to go over there and pick that boy up and carry him around in your arms, and kind of hits you like a stack of bricks. But then I step back and I'm like, you're right. He's crying. My instinct and my history wants to say, boy, get up. You know better than that. You're okay. Stop crying. Wipe those tears off your face. But that's not the best route. Because we talk a lot about the structure nurture balance. In scenarios, I have to, be willing to jump in there and be intentional about nurture. I have to pick him up because it's not just for my son, who's 4. He sees the way that I nurture. I'm his model, and as well as, my 6-year-old daughter is watching. I'm her model of what a male looks like to nurture. So it's just a constant reflection, having people around me to kind of call me out on it. And I have to be intentional and force myself to do and act.
I love that. You said so much good stuff in that. I like hearing you reflect back on what Karen said about, we can't expect our kids to go where we're not willing to go. There's so much in that. For me, I found so much value in that if I'm not willing to give my kid, grace, they're not going to give me grace. If I'm not willing to be honest, how can I expect them to be honest? Mm-hmm. If I'm not going to say sorry, how can I expect them to say sorry? I mean, there's so many things in that. And that's where I find trying to live out the TBRI for myself has been so transformational, because I'm not just expecting my child to do these things, but I have to be willing to do that. And I think in that, like, the thing I love about all of this is our willingness to struggle through our triggers to get to that place. It's hard. I hear you saying you have to take baby steps, incremental. It goes so against everything in us. We are also rewiring our brains, just like we're expecting, or not expecting, but we're needing from our kids, we're trying to do. And so if we're not willing to struggle through those triggers and experience how hard that is, then how can we have that compassionate parenting? That's why I love to call it compassionate parenting, because it's empathy. It's me going, okay, I get it. I understand how hard this is for you to regulate, because I'm struggling through this and I'm an adult who knows better, and I have a safe place. I have all these things in place. And I like that you said, you need a group of safe people to keep you accountable. I think support groups, I don't think you can get through this without that. And you need that place where you're willing to be honest. And I think that is so hard, and one of the biggest hurdles to overcome in the beginning is to be willing to be transparent and honest about where you're really at. No one wants to share in a group, man, I just blew it. My kid told me they weren't going to do A, B, and C, and I told them they better do A, B, and C, and it just escalated from there, and doors were slamming and things were flying, like no one wants to come to group and say that. Yeah. But once you do that, I feel like that's when really the transformation starts, because then you're being honest with yourself, which allows you to continue to be more and more honest. Right. And those baby steps start to form. I remember that. I remember not being able to do what I wanted to do. And I love that you said, you know, your wife holds you accountable. Max, my husband, holds me accountable. I hold him accountable. I remember one time he told me, I always have to get the last word with Jonathan.
Right.
Man, I was mad at that comment. I just was like, it ate at me, but it was true.
Right.
It made me think. And I thought, why don't I just do like what you're saying? Just shut up.
Yeah.
Just shut up.
Yeah.
Zip it. And it's those baby steps each time. Then after you zip it, you get comfortable when you zip it, you push yourself a little further. Like you said, okay, now zip it and maybe be present with them in that.
Yeah.
Okay, now rub their back. Maybe you don't have the right words yet, but okay, next day, next fit, whatever, rub their back and be present.
Yeah.
So I love the baby steps. What are some other tools that we can use?
Yeah, I would say I was thinking about practical tools. I think first, and you know, I think we have to take a look at um, not necessarily. I keep clicking views. I'm looking at myself. I don't know where you went, Tristan, but it's okay. Where everybody went, but I had an awkward moment. I'm sorry, but the practical part of it, I think it's important to you know, especially in thinking about TBRI, is again, it's not uh you it's figuring out what you already do that is relational, that is nurturing, you know. And I think for me that was a another pivotal moment when I had to, you know, figure out like, you know, what I do to nurture doesn't look exactly like what my wife does to nurture, but I'm building connection and relationships. So what does that look like? So for example, right now, kind of what's hot in our house as far as, you know, nurture with me is you know, like my daughter loves Barbies, you know what I mean? And so as she's playing with Barbies, I literally have to, and it just happened yesterday, like, Daddy, will you play Barbies with me? And I'm like, no, I don't want to play Barbies again. I know you just got new Barbies, but in my mind, you know, I have to ask that question. Daren, is it about you or is it about this baby, right? You making it about you right now. So get your tail on that floor and pull out the Barbie comb or whatever it is, you know, and start playing Barbie. And when you really look down at the detail of just playing Barbie, I'm actually modeling what giving care looks like. You know what I mean? I'm brushing the Barbie's hair, and my daughter's looking at me, and even in this interaction, you know, we can't miss these small things and subtle things that are so powerful. Because also, as I'm brushing Barbie's hair, I'm giving nurture, and I'm demonstrating that. I'm also making eye contact with my baby girl, you know, and she needs to understand in these what we would call proactive times and these fun times, and the best way that kids know how to communicate is through play. She needs to know what soft eyes look like in her daddy, you know what I mean? So therefore, the times when I do need to be structured and bring structure to the equation. So if you're doing something that's about to harm you, you know, you need to know a difference in soft eyes and these structured eyes, and that's not okay. You know, whether it be something that's about to harm you or some behavior that's not okay, but it's all in the practice of doing that. I mean, both of my kids, both son and daughter, have long hair, you know, so I've had to figure out how to get in there and get a comb myself and brush their hair and go through that. And again, it's giving care. Band-aids are a big hit in our house, and we don't do them in the context of a nurture group, but we have, you know, several fun-looking Band-aids. So, you know, anytime there's a boo-boo, and it seems like there's 10,000 boo-boos going on in a week, right? But I have to say, don't worry about the price of those Band-aids. You can order more Band-aids on Amazon. You know, walk in the bathroom or have the baby come back and put a Band-aid on you, or you put a Band-aid, you know, your child. Or just last night with my son, I was putting a Band-aid on a teenage mutant ninja turtle, you know what I mean?
Right.
But that's a nurturing experience and activity. Rough and tumble play, you know. And my wife doesn't like it, but that's our love language. Like my daughter and son, we do a lot of wrestling, right? And so if you really think about meeting the needs of the whole child, I'm getting the nurture in, the play, the laughter, the fun. I'm also meeting, you know, sensory needs, because especially my son, because he has a lot of energy. So I know when it comes to bedtime, if I want this boy to lay down and go to sleep, he has to get that energy out, and we do that, you know. And again, my wife doesn't agree with it all the time, but that means we got to do body slams on the bed and headlocks and wrestle around, you know, before we, you know, bring it down and regulate and get to sleep. And I saw cooking, I just saw it pop up. That's another favorite in our household when you think about practicing giving and receiving care. So like on Mother's Day, you know, what the kids wanted to do was cook mama a Mother's Day meal, right? And we made it a big deal, you know, and there's a lot of underlying wins in this, you know, not beyond mama being happy on Mother's Day, right?
Right.
But we made it a big deal. Like we all put on aprons, you know, we got aprons with chefs. We told mama, hey, go in the bedroom, lock the door, don't come out for the next hour or so. And we were chefs 1 minute, then we turned into servers the next minute. And they're having to serve, you know, mama, bring plates, set the table, bring food. But it's a fun way where they literally get practice, giving care, receiving care. And this is the thing about the nurture. It's not necessarily about talking about it. What we know about the body and the biology, it's about getting the repetitive experiences of doing and having those experiences. So your body is wired up in a way on how to do it an appropriate way, if you will, right? And especially in the context of our kids who've experienced trauma, they've had so many repetitive experiences of harm and danger and inappropriate care. They don't know what it is. So we have to, in our day-to-day, have these experiences and activity. And again, based on what you have in your household, set that up to where they have these repetitive experiences and get that over and over and over. And then lastly, a big one at my house is bedtime. You know, that the bedtime ritual is so important. And every day for the last 6 years with my daughter, they know we're going, you know, we're gonna lay down, we're gonna sing like 10,000 songs, right? At the bedtime is like an hour, you're gonna sing a bunch of songs, but it's the same songs. We're gonna pray, we're gonna read bedtime stories, and really intentional about when we're reading, the kids just lay on their backs because they want a back rub, and we providing that touch, and we're doing the back rub. And literally, like the last week, I don't know what it's been, but it's been a huge experience for me on how to receive nurture, because my daughter, which she typically doesn't do this, they both go to mama at bedtime and want to sit on her lap, but my daughter's literally been coming to lay her head on my chest at bedtime. And I know as a 6-year-old, I'm thinking about this right here, and it's like holding a baby. And it comes down to, I know she can hear daddy's heartbeat when we're singing, when we're praying. She can hear the vibration of my chest, all of the touches going on, the whole nine. We're having this experience. And the thing about it, when I really step back and think about this experience, I don't want to say it does more for me, but it's so fulfilling for me in my history, in my growth moving forward, than the experience that she's having herself, right? And she doesn't even know it, but it's those repetitive experiences that we put in place to create that type of atmosphere and experience, if you will. So those are just a few things that, you know, it's not anything that, you know, you'll find in a PhD written paper. Is literally stuff that you do every day in your house, but it's powerful stuff. And I say it jokingly, but I always want people to, this literally globally, this is what we hear directly from parents. You know, you have these experiences, and I know we're talking about nurture, but you have these experiences with your child of behaviors, and we can, you know, in a quick way, go out. And I'm not saying, you know, talking to a counselor or a therapist or, you know, things of that nature and getting certain type of support is not important. But the question when people, you know, automatically go out, of professionals, you know, automatically think that they're the savior, you know, for this child and this family. We always encourage people to think about, but what about the other 23 hours?
Right.
You're at the therapist's office for 45 minutes, but the other 23 hours, right, is at your house. And you have everything you need within you and your human and in your relationship to meet the needs of this baby right here, right? So I just encourage everybody when I say that, it's in your house and it's right up under your nose, and just notice what you're doing and just do more of it.
Amen. I love that. It's so true. I mean, we can, you know, do so much just on our own to work through a lot of this, you know, stuff. I mean, really, yeah, I don't want to put, you know, I'm a proponent for therapy, but you know, a lot of it is talk. And we can do that in our support groups. We can do that on our own. I did a lot of journaling. I wrote, in fact, I remember Karen saying that when I went and I did the adult attachment interview. And I remember asking her, you know, how could I work through this? And she said, write. She said, I want you to write for 6 months straight. Just write about it all.
Definitely.
And I wrote about it all. You can work through so much. There's something about the act of actually writing out that I think helps you on that journey.
Yes, exactly right.
So I appreciate you saying that. We're going to kind of wrap this part up. I want to end with 3 questions that I ask everybody. And I do want to say one thing is I love how you call teenagers and babies. I just love that. I remember the first time when you were calling people babies at the practitioner training and stuff. It took me a little bit. I'm like, he's talking about teenagers. He's calling them babies. But it's true. It just, to me, you see what's inside of them. You know, the little child that you're trying to nurture and give back to them what they didn't have. So I just love that. It just speaks about the sweetness of your intent and mindset towards these teenagers that everybody else thinks looks so rough.
Yeah. It really, what I've noticed, and even calling our kids babies really goes over well when we're at a juvenile correctional facility, talking to staff. But it really does soften the heart in so many ways, because the question always is, if I know he's 16 chronological age, but developmentally 8, street smarts of a 38-year-old. I get all of that. It's complex, it's complicated, but he doesn't need that you know 16-year-old response that's coming out of your mouth. He needs the 8-year-old response, and more often the 8-month-old response. And if you were viewing this baby who's 16 through the lens of an 8-month-old, you would never run up to an 8-month-old baby and scream and yell when they're crying out of need. You would never, and I can speak to my own, you know, self in the past and residential. I would never go up to a 8-month-old baby and tackle them and put them in a restraint because they, you know, spit up on me or they smack me in the face, you know, whatever it is. So it really does reframe, you know, the way we see. Therefore, the way we act, and I don't know, for me, it's just always been a good way to keep my head in a sane place, you know, because if I go back to my history with this 16-year-old boy, I always tell people, you know, in Arkansas, if this happened in Arkansas, we're gonna get our backs dirty. It's a fight based on what just came out of your mouth or what you just did to me. But I can't do that because I have to be able to look at this child, look at this baby as, yes, they're 16, but the behavior that they're displaying, they're expressing the need that's no different from the 8-month-old crying out to come feed me, hold me, whatever it might be, change my diaper. So how do we put this information of TBRI in a way with that 16-year-old that's meeting a need? I might not pick up that 16-year-old in my arms and rock them back and forth, but there's 1,000 different ways that I can approach it and interact to you know, get to the same outcome. We just have to take a different route, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I hear you. I love it. I know for myself, like even the correcting principles, I reframe in my mind the wording as discipleship, because to me, if I'm discipling a friend or some other person, I'm not correcting them as far as my historical thinking of what that means, you know, not based on TBRI, but just so I don't even go there. You know, I think of it more in terms of discipleship. That just helps me kind of reframe what correcting is all about, you know. Okay, Daren. So, Daren Jones, tell me, what brings you joy?
Fishing and eating.
Right on. What do you love to eat?
Oh man, everything. I really, well, let me take that back. I like to eat, but I probably like cooking more than I like to eat. So, and I don't know, we pretty much, I hate to put my wife on blast, but I do all of the cooking at our house.
Nice.
So I really like to just try new things to cook, especially if, you know, we end up traveling somewhere and I might come back and try a dish from, you know, a different location where I've been. So cooking and fishing.
How fun. I love that. I don't have that cooking love. I wish I did though. So, okay, if you could say one thing to your younger self when you first started this journey of being with kids from hard places, what would it be?
I could tell myself,
Your younger self.
I would tell myself to give myself more grace, and also the adults in general more grace, now knowing what I know. Because we can only, speaking of myself, you know, we can only give what we've been given. So that's what I would tell myself.
I love that. I'm writing it down. And then my last question is, what foster or adoption myth would you like to blow up right now? Or because of who you are, if there's a TBRI myth that you'd like to blow up, which is a whole nother show I'd love to do.
Which foster adopted? I'll go with a TBRI myth.
Nice.
I would say we hear a lot that you know, TBRI, you know, is too permissive, that touchy-feely stuff. It'll work for this type kid, but it won't work for this kid over here. And I disagree. I've seen it work in, as we mentioned before, TBRI is it's all about meeting needs, you know, and it's just about us figuring out, you know, what those needs are that are being expressed, and within the tools that we have in our toolbox, which tool is the best, you know, to have this interaction with the kiddos. So yeah, that would be the myth.
I love that. I hear when people say that, you know, whatever it is about TBRI, and then they'll go on to tell me, you know, whatever's next. And I think in my head, I'm like, that's TBRI. You just don't know it yet. You're sharing power. You're
Right.
like giving voice. But, sometimes I think especially as the kids get older, that we don't look at it that way. So I love that answer. I'm in agreement with you. So, anyways, I just wanted to thank you for coming on tonight, Daren. I think it's been a great conversation. I really appreciate your openness and your transparency and just sharing your wisdom and your strength and the hope with us.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, and everybody stay safe and continue to survive. Because I know if you're anything like me, this whole COVID experience is it's been a challenge. It's been a challenge. Definitely stretching me in ways that I haven't been stretched before. So stay safe, and I hope to connect at some point in the future with everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, Daren. We're going to put your website up, how to get a hold of the Karen Purvis Institute Child Development. They have a free TBRI 101 course going on right now that they have offered so graciously as free through, I think, the end of June.
Right.
So definitely take that. There's TBRI for the classroom. So if you want to pass that freebie on to teachers, maybe in the fall, the teachers your kids are having, whatever, do it. And we'll follow up with that in our follow-up email. And also on Wednesdays, we have a support group. Support groups are so important. That is free, that my husband is hosting, and it's based on TBRI and Karen Purvis videos. So we'd love to have you join that. And yeah, and on May 26th, next week, we're going to be having Stephanie Fast, who is a survivor and an adoptee, and she'll be talking about from surviving to thriving, just what we've been talking about, her own journey. She's got a book called She Is Mine that is just amazing. And after that, Brandy Lee, who's going to be talking to us about soul care, how to love ourselves and give ourselves voice. And stick around for the after party. We're going to say goodbye to Daren, but I'm going to stay on for another half an hour, and we're going to hang out and just have conversation for anybody who wants to keep this going.
All right. See y'all later. Bye-bye, everybody.
All right. Well, take care. Thanks, Daren.